Welcome to the ChargePoint podcast, brought to you by Flexecharge, your gateway to the future of EV charging. In each episode, we dive deep into the world of EV infrastructure, offering insights and perspectives from industry leaders, innovators, and the people at the forefront of deploying charging solutions and networks. Join us to explore the exciting developments that are accelerating our world towards sustainable mobility.
Welcome to the ChargePoint podcast, episode 19. Today, we're heading to Sweden, a country that once seemed unstoppable in its EV trajectory. But things are changing. EV sales are slowing, and the share of electric vehicles in new car registration is on the decline, unfortunately. What's going on in a country that was supposed to be leading the charge? To help us unpack this, we first speak with Rickard Boy-Agenes from Implement Consulting Group. As the Swedish EV market matures, what does it really take for a CPO to survive and thrive when growth alone is no longer enough? Rickard lays out why we're moving beyond land grab strategies and what it means to win on operational excellence, energy smarts, and strategic focus. Then we're joined by David Lincoln Blom from Recharge, one of the largest charging networks in the Nordics. So how does a leading CPO recalibrate when the market dynamics shift? David shares how Recharge is navigating tighter grid constraints, slower EV adoption, and shifting user needs, while still pushing for reliable, scalable, and profitable charging operations. This episode is about more than just Sweden. It's a glimpse into what happens when early EV adoption meets real-world infrastructure, economics, and regulation, and what that means for CPO across Europe. So, what does a post-land grab strategy actually looks like? Let's kick things off with Rickard. And welcome to the first guest for this special episode about the Swedish EV charging market. Welcome to Rickard. Hi, Rickard.
Thank you, Christoph, and thanks for having me. Pleasure.
Pleasure is all mine. Why don't we start with your origins story? So please go back as long as you want, but whatever you find relevant to for people to understand your background and what led you to be today leading e-mobility at Implement.
Yes, and my name is Rickard Boy-Agenes. I'm a managing partner here at the Implement Consulting Group, heading up our office here in Gothenburg in Sweden, which is the topic for today, right? And I'm also leading our global e-mobility team at Implement. So one could say, born and raised here in the automotive industry. I've been working both with the passenger car side and also with commercial vehicles. And what I do here at Implement is basically advising clients in the whole value chain on their transition to fully electric transport system. And a little bit of a personal touch to that. I think it's very much of a passion nerd topic for me, and it's really a privilege to work something that lies close to the heart and also in the end, leave this world in a better place. So that's the short intro about me, Christian.
All right. So you've been all your career in consulting, or have you also worked on, I would say, on brand side or within companies?
Well, I had a real job as well. And so I started my career in R&D at Volvo Group. So worked with servitization of product offerings and new business models, and transition into a little bit consulting, deep desire to make more impact, and found that path in my career. So that's a little bit the starting point on the trajectory into e-mobility.
Interesting. Yeah, so R&D as a background also. So definitely, you are not shy of nerdy discussions that I heard you said before. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but that's great because we like to be nerdy, absolutely, on this podcast. So please tell us a bit more about Implement and what you do as a consulting house.
Yes, sure. So Implement Consulting Group is a leading management consulting firm with Danish heritage. And, founded back in 1996. We've grown with more than 20% year on year. And I think we're getting close to 2,000 consultants with offices across here in Northern Europe, and also open up an office in US and serving clients around the globe. And my team and I work in the whole e-mobility value chain, from upstream, raw material, battery technologies, focusing a lot on charging infrastructure, CPOs, and also automotive OEMs. And we have a lot of experience both from strategy design to implementation and supporting clients across all the different functional domains, commercial, strategy, digital, and operations. I think what makes us all a bit different is both the ability to help clients with their problem solving and getting things done to create impact. And I think that's in essence what we do here in Implement and my e-mobility team.
Great, clear, thank you. We had some great episodes picturing the Danish market, the UK market, and it was about time to talk about this, super fast growing also Swedish market, which is definitely in the top 3-4 on the European in terms of penetration. Maybe you could tell us a bit about, take a bit of history on the market, right? So how has the Swedish EV charging market evolved? We can go back as 10 years, whenever from the origins, because you've been following this, right? So type of chargers. So tell us a bit about the different waves of the rise of electric vehicle in Sweden.
Yeah, absolutely. So we could start to a little bit zoom out and look on a broader picture. Mm-hmm. And if we take a little bit of a data perspective on that, mm-hmm. We've seen a compounded annual growth rate of close to 40%. And mm-hmm. We're now up at 58% penetration of new registrations if we take mm-hmm. Year 2024.
Nice.
And the rolling fleet has grown compounded annual growth rate of 55%. So we're up to a little bit more than 762,000 electric cars on the road if we take the 2024 data. And if we very briefly touched upon the truck side as well, we're seeing a significant growth of CAGR close to 150% back since they introduced in 2017. And what is a little bit special on the Swedish market, we have a substantial part which is plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, which is mm-hmm. a little bit different if we compare to the other Nordic markets, for example. So if we take the 2024 figure, we had 58% of penetration, total new mm-hmm. registrations, mm-hmm. which has been a little bit stable if we look 2022, 2023, 2024 percentage-wise. But then we have a total industry volume which is lower. So we had 173,000 cars back in 2023, and we were down to 157,000 2024. And only 94,000 out of these cars were actually battery electric vehicles, compared to 63,000 plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. So it's a significant part there, which is plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, which is a little bit different to the Swedish market. We tend to see that as intermediate step towards going fully battery electric, of course driven by the larger OEMs here in Sweden. Volvo Cars, for example, had an attractive portfolio of plug-in hybrid electric vehicles compared to what we have seen in other markets. And I think if we take just very briefly the truck side as well, it's going a little bit better, to be honest. We have close to 10% or 9.6% for 2024 when we look on the commercial vehicle side.
Sorry, 10.6% of the new commercial vehicles sold were electric in 24.
Yes, 9.6% of everything more than 3.5 tons. And of course, there's a lot of light vehicles in these figures. What is different here is that the absolute majority is battery electric. We see very few plug-in hybrid electric vehicles on the truck side. So on the roads in Sweden already today, we have more than 1,000 trucks, and only in 2024 we had more than 500 new registrations. So slowly we see a little bit momentum on the commercial vehicle side as well, which is very promising. And so that's the story on the new truck and car sales in Sweden.
Yeah. And so if we dive a bit into the history, so how, what was the picture 5 years ago in terms of, let's talk about infrastructure right now. So the chicken and the egg, the vehicles and the charging, right? So has charging been, according to you, behind or ahead of the market in terms of?
But that's a really interesting question, Christoph. And we saw a tipping point here. But starting back 2020, we had close to 13,000 public AC charging points, and we only had 1,300 DC fast charging points. So we had a ratio 1 to 10 between the two technologies there.
Yeah.
If we look at 2024, we have 45,000 AC charge points publicly, and we have 8,500 DC charging points. So you have a ratio of 5 instead of 10. So we see a significant uptake in DC charge points in relation to public AC charging. What is interesting here, if you compare that to the rolling population, and I think that's an important KPI if we look at the numbers of EVs per charge point, and it gives you a little bit of an understanding what is the ratio, how available is public charging infrastructure for EV drivers. And back in 2021 and 2022, we had close to 90 EVs per public fast charging DC point. And if we look at 2024, we are down to a ratio of 48 EVs per charge point in Sweden. And I think this is an interesting dilemma for the industry. It's actually quite convenient to drive an EV in Sweden today. We have the infrastructure in place. Yes, there are some gaps, especially when Swedes and Danes are heading to the mountains for skiing. It's a little bit of a bottleneck. But besides these special occasions, there is actually a good network in place. And I would frame this as a little bit of a tipping point, because usually we talk of an S-curve adoption. But what we have seen now with the Swedish regulation, and we pulled a lot of the subsidies for EVs. We had the bonus-malus system, and we removed all the bonus part for adopting an EV, and reversed the transition here by subsidizing diesel again. So the point here is that we are at a critical point in the market, that we have continued uptake on the volumes of available infrastructure for EV drivers, but we have not the momentum necessary on the volumes to come. And I think this is a critical point for 2025 to see the upswing in the volumes for EVs to continue to sustain the build out of the charging infrastructure and make sure that all the charge point operators, they're there to take their investments and continue to expand the network. I think that's critical for the Swedish market. I derailed a little bit from your questions here.
No, you didn't. Thank you. Yeah, I think so it's one which is ahead, but it has its challenges in terms of really reaching the maturity. I hadn't forgotten. I remember now that you're mentioning that they had been kind of reversing, by subsidizing. Well, the subsidies haven't been continued and consistent, which is the case in Denmark actually, where now that's why I think we in Denmark the last month was something like above 60% of new cars sold being electric, and there's a lot of political debate and lobbying to keep the subsidies, to keep pushing until you really reach the tipping point. And you're right, it's a chicken and egg. So, but I hope that the CPOs, the Swedish CPOs, won't be out of breath and will continue to push. So we'll come back to the CPO landscape.
Yes.
So that was maybe one difference, maybe in subsidies. But are there any other differences that being a Nordic specialist or being Gothenburg and seeing the Scandinavian countries? So any differences that are notable between the Swedish, Norwegian, Danish markets?
Yeah, but we can pick up the conversation there, and as most of us are familiar, Norway has been the Northgard leading the EV adoption in Scandinavia, and I think Denmark is a very interesting case if we look on the comparison. So if we take passenger cars, we have, I think it's close to 96% in Norway, which is just fantastic. And if we look on the data for Sweden and Denmark, we are around 58-56% if we look on the 2024 numbers. Mm-hmm. And what is interesting here is if you scratch a little bit on the surface and connecting back to 23% of total sales is plug-in hybrid electric vehicles in Sweden, and only 35% fully battery electric vehicles. And if we compare that to Denmark, we are more than 50% battery electric vehicles with just a small fraction, maybe 4%, which is plug-in hybrid electric vehicle in Denmark. So quite difference between the two markets. And I think there is a lot of learnings from Denmark from a policy perspective to sustain the trajectory. And Sweden, unfortunately, is quite a good case how you can, I don't know how we politically should put this, Christoph, but to screw up. Yeah. So if you pull the incentive schemes in the wrong timing, you can really, ruin that momentum. And that might, what we're witnessing in Sweden, hopefully we will have a little bit more sense making in the Swedish political system and reinforce the transition. I mean, it's of utmost importance for the industry here as well to, make sure that we have a momentum for Volvo Cars, Polestar, larger Geely Group with Seekers and the whole ecosystem around that, but also on the commercial vehicle side with both Volvo Trucks and Scania to keep the momentum in the transition. And of course, the whole market is a very important dimension to this transition.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, being an OEM heavy market, you would, I guess that they're lobbying everything they can to make that happen, and I guess that that really helps to have OEMs. So, how is the political wind blowing? Is it blowing in favor of the EVs? Do they realize that there was a bit of a setback? And again, being an OEM heavy country, listening to the OEMs and saying, okay, we have to be a poster child also. So, how is it looking on the political landscape?
Yeah. It's a very good question, Christopher. And I think we are at a stage where we are gradually moving in the right direction again. So we had back in 2022 when we reformed the amount of biofuels the oil and gas companies had to drop in, and I think it was reduced from 32% down to 6%, which was heavily criticized by everyone, including the oil and gas companies. Now we have successfully, we have seen a turning point in the conversation, and small steps we have increased it from 6% to 11%, and I think it's also, and this is driven by the far right in the Swedish political system. We also have the dilemma that we are not fulfilling the targets by the European Union, and Sweden could face significant penalties for not achieving our climate ambitions. I think one data point here was that we had increased the emission from the transport sector by 18% in 2024. So we're definitely not going in the right direction there. I think the consensus is that we need to come back on track. And as we touched upon here before, Christoph, we are in a critical state with getting back the momentum on the electrification agenda. So let's see how that will evolve.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's also what's so exciting, fascinating. Is that it's about also it's all the way to geopolitical influence. It's about local politics, geopolitical, and yes, I read recently that Volvo was very recently was really appealing to the EU, saying that now this was a catastrophe to try to push back the deadline for phasing out fossil fuel cars. I mean, new fossil fuel cars, for all the good pupils like that are really trying to follow this agenda, and even earlier like Volvo, and now you're giving lead time and for the others to keep on selling their other cars, right? So it's that's
a good point. I mean, the automotive industry here in Sweden has been pioneering. Yes, Tesla have been years ahead, but Volvo Cars has been making a bold move and betting on the electrification from early days. In the same way, also Volvo Trucks and Scania on the truck side. I think Scania has been a little bit unfortunate with the bet on Northvolt and sourcing of green cells, and we have the unfortunate situation with the bankruptcy with Northvolt, and now they have adapted to that with dual sourcing of cells from other suppliers from Asia and continue to depend on these supply chains. But of course, it's important for the whole industry with predictability, and I think that's a key word here. No one likes uncertainty when it comes to the huge investments required for the industry. And it's a dangerous situation when we gave the automotive industry in Europe a little bit of slack. So instead of only looking at 2025, they had 26 and 27. Same targets, but extended the time period. But of course, the risk here is that we open up Pandora's box, and that you can continue to negotiate this with the European Union. And that's, of course, not what we would like to happen here.
No. Okay, we digress a little bit, but it's nevertheless, I think it's extremely interesting, the whole ecosystem. And again, Sweden, being a unique position. I mean, that's the difference between Norway, for me, Sweden and Denmark, is that you have this industry and big bets in the value chain on the vehicle side. Yeah. So okay, but let's go back a bit to more concrete and down to earth and really consideration and insight for our listeners. So can you help me to paint a bit the picture of the CPO landscape? So who's been deploying networks we talked about earlier?
Yes. So if we take the Swedish market and if we look at the number of sites, if we use that as a measure, so OKQ8 together with Skellefteå Kraft has the largest presence with 160 sites end of 2024, closely followed by Recharged by 150 sites and Circle K by 126 sites. Mm-hmm. What is interesting in the market here is large number of players. We have Vattenfall in charge, Tesla, which open up their DC charging network, Ebony, E.ON, Mir. We have the Ionity, Allego. What is also interesting here is that we have new players, Nima Energy, to take an example here, which has slightly different strategies than some of the other ones, backed by a larger investor, and has been focused on mainly the larger cities and catering for ultra-fast charging in city centers. Also building a network around the major transportation corridors in Sweden as well. But quite a fragmented landscape, and one of our predictions is that it will probably come to a consolidation phase in the market. So we've seen a lot of the CPOs focusing on the build-out agenda, but we will probably shift more towards driving more what we would in consulting language call traditional value creation levers. So we have pricing and sales strategy as an example, how you optimize your portfolio of the network, operational efficiencies, and we probably will see a lot of M&A activities down the road on the consolidation of the market. And then, of course, we have the grid capacity agenda and how you can mitigate these challenges with battery energy storage and your agenda, Christoph.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We can come back to that in the next question. So just to sum up on the landscape. So, but you have really the concrete statistics, maybe on like who's the in terms of number of public charging points. What's the ranking? Just to get it straight. Do you have it?
Yes. So we have OKQ8 as number one, Recharged, Circle K, InCharge, Tesla, Ebony, E.ON, Mir, Ionity, and Allego in that order.
Perfect.
If we look on the number of sites there, and if we compare to rest of the Nordic countries, including both Denmark, Finland, and Norway, Recharge is the absolute number one in terms of number of sites, followed by the Danish OK and Ebony and Circle K, and then we have Clever. So a little bit difference in the Swedish market with OKQ8 and Skellefteåkraft and Circle K, which stands out a little bit if we compare it to the overall on the other markets there.
Interesting, yeah. So, but that's going to be interesting to follow, like pure players like Nima Energy. I found that really exciting. Reminds me of Stella Energy from out of Copenhagen, where we had the founder in the episode about the Danish market, Kenneth, who also opened recently in Oslo. So, do you see also players like Nima expanding to other urban areas in Scandinavia? Outside of Sweden?
Yeah, most likely we will see an expansion, and if they decide to go for Denmark or Finland, Balticum, let's see. I would assume that the Norwegian market is already quite competitive, but to your point, we saw Stella Energy going straight on the competition for the market in Oslo. Yeah. It's a little bit different in the business model where they have catered to enable for their taxi drivers to charge. And we haven't seen that specific play in the Swedish market yet.
No,
But to your point, it's obvious
it,
that Nima is quite close to the larger taxi companies in
yeah,
Gothenburg, Stockholm, and Malmö.
I can imagine. Yeah, and what was driving, we heard in the Norwegian episode, is that in Oslo now it's 100% electric taxis. You cannot have a taxi which is on the electric, and they had the legacy of AC chargers, which is not fulfilling the needs of taxis. Some can do with the charging at night; that's enough for the whole day, but some more and more need to recharge during the day, and you don't want to wait for 1 hour, 2 hours. So that's what that open a flank for players, and I guess Nima could
Yeah,
also maybe win some local markets
yeah,
in cities where there's too much AC and not enough DC. So that's exciting to see DC in urban areas. Yeah,
yes,
definitely interesting. Yeah, so you mentioned, you alluded a bit to it. So let's really talk about some of the challenges slash opportunities. There's always two sides of the coin, right? I'm sure also within consulting, you're good at flipping both sides. So what are the challenges that you see EV charging professionals face today on the Swedish market, and what opportunities? Everything, grid limitation. Is it finding location? Is it convincing EV drivers to come? So fighting for the market share. So tell us a bit what you see.
yeah. So I think we would view it as several interconnected factors. There's a lot of challenges on the software side for CPOs. It's pricing in itself, getting utilization, and I think ultimately connecting to the profitability. And if we look on the actors in Sweden, the only one we have seen showing a positive EBIT margin. We have not the full data set for 2024 yet, but 2023 was only Nima Energy when they didn't have any network in place, basically. So it's a challenging situation from a profitability. Breaking that down into different areas, I think the reliability uptime is one important one. Of course, the high infrastructure cost and building ahead of the curve with heavy capex investments is, of course, a challenge. And I think we have seen it a little bit more in the Danish market with price competitiveness between the different actors. But of course, Tesla setting the price point in the market, pricing has been a challenge, of course. And specifically for the Swedish market, I would emphasize this changing regulatory environment as a critical factor.
Yeah.
So connecting back to my comment before, you have all these different challenges, and connecting back, we will, shift from what we call the land grab network expansion phase, which is focused on the customer acquisition and forming the right partnerships and collaborations, to more of what we touched upon here, that getting the right pricing in the market, optimize the portfolio. Maybe we will see some divestments and closing down of non-profitable sites. And I think a lot of the CPOs will continue to drive on the operational efficiency agenda, and upcoming M&A activities in the market with consolidating. It's a long list of CPOs there, and we believe that if you configure your operating model in the right way, it's a scale game, and how you can really win in the market with a highly effective organization, and making sure you have a network in top shape for reliable and securing uptime of the charging network.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I guess, and we talked about that in the previous episode about branding and marketing. That will also be an increasing, but that's what you said with sales and marketing, is pricing, is differentiating, it's a loyalty building. And just maybe a last comment on one of our favorite topics also, since we work at Flexecharge, at the interface between EV charging and the grid. So again, you're not a grid specialist, but just you know the ecosystem. So what is your take on the Swedish grids, state, and how is it, offering challenges but also opportunities for EV charging professionals?
Yes, I think we are quite fortunate in Sweden with in comparison,
Yes.
very good network. So it's not necessarily a challenge of finding available power in the system. It's more, can we find it in the right place? So I think that's a little bit of the challenge at hand. And if we look at the build out of the public DC charging, especially for pass car, it's been an opportunity for the players to find available capacity in the grid. But the challenge is, can you get access to land where you want it? And for the oil and gas companies with existing stations, can you get the right capacity there? But in comparison to rest of Europe, I think we are quite fortunate in that sense. The challenge lies here if you don't have the grid where you have the location, and you need to reinforce it. It's the long lead times.
Yeah.
It's maybe more challenging on the commercial vehicle side. We need, everything from 5 to plus 10 megawatt for larger charge sites. And that's a different game compared to fast charging of passenger cars.
Yeah.
And a lot of clients we work with on the commercial vehicle side and build out of charging infra, both of depots in the larger metropolitan areas. The grid constraint is a real problem in these areas. So that's a challenge for sure.
Yeah.
And I think what we will see more and more, various forms of load management solutions as you work with, Christoph, and the combination with both battery energy storage, but also how you direct connect that to renewable energy, and more these type of integrated solutions down the road to solve the availability of grid and
Exactly.
the lead times to get the grid you need.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the potential of flexibility. I think I see a lot of activities with companies like quite advanced, right? In Sweden, like InGrid, this company doing grid scale batteries, so not really EV charging, but and then we had also this episode with Jonathan Raber from Fever.
Yes.
You are a fellow citizen, right? Fever Energy, who was talking about predicting that energy would be cheap cost, almost zero, and you're gonna pay for when do you want to use it, right?
Yeah.
If you want to decide when you want to use it, then you have to pay. So that's the whole amazing strategies that needs to be in place. So that's one bit of a prediction beyond the M&As, which you are predicting. Any other predictions in terms of evolution of the market that you would like to share with our audience for the Swedish EV charging market?
I think what will be my top three dreams and desires is that we get an improved customer experience for the end user. We can't wait enough to get plug and charge in place, and all the hassle we had over the years with RFID, all the apps,
different apps,
no visible roaming solutions in place, etc. So I think both on the technology side, but also what is the customer experience when you charge your car? Do you have the right facilities, the collaborations with restaurants? Can you get your favorite coffee, etc.? I mean, these things will matter more in terms of the customer experience down the road. I think the second point here to emphasize is that we get the full network coverage and density and the momentum in the build out of the infrastructure, so we don't get delayed in the build out. And the third point here I would like to bring up is that we get back on track with the S-curve adoption and the upswing in EV sales. So this go hand in hand with the build out of the infrastructure. I think this is the critical thing to look for in the future.
Exciting. Yeah, I noted. Thank you very much, Ricard, for sharing all those insights. I hope it was I'm sure it was useful for the audience to get a better understanding of this market with so much potential, started to leverage a bit on the brakes, and now it needs to hit the pedal to the metal again, right? And it has everything to succeed. We'll follow closely, and people can catch up with you also on LinkedIn if they want to hear more. Implement definitely can help you also with you guys' deep knowledge and expertise about the e-mobility sector. Thank you very much again for coming and being in the hot seat, and I'll see you and have a great afternoon. Thank you.
Pleasure to be here, and thank you so much, Christoph.
You're welcome. Thank you. And now let's move on to the second conversation in this episode dedicated to the Swedish EV charging market. In the hot seat now, I have David from Recharge. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Christoph. Good to be here.
Thank you for taking the time to sit in the hot seat. So why don't we dive straight into it? Can you tell us, please, your origin story that led you to the position you have today at Recharge?
Yes, I can. I'm a Swede living in Norway, so I get the both worlds. I'm currently head of brand marketing and communications at Recharge, and I've been here for almost 2 years now. I guess the journey into e-mobility and sustainability for me started with Tesla in 2017, 2018 as head of marketing in the Nordics, which later led to a position as head of marketing for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So I guess that was how I got into sustainability, e-mobility, charging, electric vehicles, and so on. But start of my career was, sorry, what was that?
Yeah, I was saying it was a good stepping stone for sure, Tesla, to get into this industry.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, for sure. But I also learned when I joined Recharge after a while that they were as early as Tesla were, just not as maybe profiled as Tesla is or were. But yeah, start of my career was completely different. I was in entertainment in 8 years, or for 8 years, Viacom, looking after brands like Nickelodeon, Comedy Central, MTV, and so on.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's me in a nutshell. The red thread has always pretty much been marketing, communications, and leadership, and that's also what I studied back in the day. Feels very distant now.
And branding, yeah, strong brand expertise. There's an episode we recently released about branding and marketing in the CPO business, and it's really have a growing importance. So it's good for Recharge that you have such a solid background. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, exciting. So tell us. So we're here to talk about the EV charging market in Sweden. So with the lens, from Recharge being one of the key players. So if you maybe tell us a bit the Recharge history, then I guess that will help us to shape a bit our perception of the EV charging market, right? So what have been some of the key milestones in building the network? Tell us the company history, please.
Sure. Just a note on the episode that you were mentioning. I'm looking forward to actually listening to that, the branding part that you mentioned. But I saw that it's not quite out yet, maybe. Anyway, yes, the origin story of Recharge, it began almost 20 years ago in 2008.
Wow.
Back then, we were part of Fortum, big energy company. And we started with building charging stations for electric vehicles in Norway, Sweden, and Finland. Predominantly Norway and Finland, I would say, but a little bit in Sweden as well. And it was an exciting time back then. I wasn't actually in the business, but I can imagine it was an exciting time because the EV movement, if you wish, was in its infancy, right? So we were among the first to lay the groundwork for sustainable, accessible infrastructure. And I guess a notable milestone in that period was our collaboration with Ensto as we introduced new charging points for EVs or electric cars. And that partnership helped us set the stage for the years to come. And sort of fast forwarding a few years to 2020, I suspect that we will be talking about the in-between years there later in the episode as well. So fast forwarding to 2020, that's when we rebranded and went from being part of Fortum to becoming Recharge, when the charging network business of Fortum was purchased by Infra Capital, which is one of the leading European infrastructure investors. And that's where we are now. I mean, last year we delivered over 90 gigawatt hours of electricity from more than 4,000 charge points at over 720 sites, which makes us the largest rapid charging network in the Nordics. So that's sort of a speed dating of a recharge, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So today you're present in how many countries?
So we're in 4 countries. We're in Norway, in Finland, in Sweden, and in Denmark.
That's right. You also planted the flag on the Danish ground. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
we did.
Yeah. So maybe we can. So Sweden is seen as a leader in EV adoption, right? So how has that translated into demand for public charging over the year, right? How has recharge evolved? I mean, going from, I guess, predominantly AC chargers and then the introduction of DC chargers. Give us a little bit of perspective on how that has evolved, this public charging.
Yeah, I mean, you mean what it looks like in Sweden and our sort of journey there with
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. As Recharge has, again, being one of the dominant player, he has probably led the way in slowly introducing DC. So it could be interesting to hear a bit your perspective on how that was rolled out.
Yeah, sure. I mean, first of all, I would say that Norway is the undisputed champion in the EV adoption space, but Sweden has, of course, also seen significant success with more and more drivers opting for electric vehicles. But what I think is important to mention is that without EVs on the road, there's little need for charging stations. So, and recently, at least sort of looking from 2023 to 2024, we are observing a somewhat concerning trend. And that is that EV share of new car sales is decreasing year on year. I think it's in 2023, the share was 39%, and now we see a share of 35%. And it's not good. It's a little bit concerning. And the drop directly impacts the demand for charging infrastructure. So we believe that government incentives are critical to reversing that trend.
Yes.
And it shouldn't necessarily be to encourage us and other players like us to build more chargers, but rather to make it easier for consumers to choose EVs by providing incentives for car buyers. What we also see in Sweden is that a large share of used EVs are exported or sold from Sweden to neighboring countries like Norway, Finland, and Denmark. Mm-hmm. So other incentives than Sweden had an EV bonus before, which was good for new car sales. It's not offered anymore, and that's not necessarily what's needed in our view either. I think we need to look at sort of subsidies for, let's say, parking or road tolls and stuff like that. Subsidies that Norway had from an early age or early start, and that sort of really got the adoption going. So that's how we and I see Sweden and the EV adoption.
Yeah, in terms of the EV adoption, yeah, for sure, there's a concerning trend, yeah, and we discussed that in the first part of the interview with Ricard from Implement Consulting. Mm-hmm. Yeah, good. Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's rewind a little bit to the question about the evolution over time of Recharge being, I would say, one of the founding CPOs on the Swedish market. So you fast forwarded to 2020. So can you rewind a little bit and go back into the in-between milestones, from the late zeros until the 20s. So yeah, what would you mention as key milestone that will help our audience to understand the journey of the EV charging market in Sweden?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we had some really large milestones and a big volume of milestones in those years as well. I think one of the earliest ones was our deal with McDonald's in Sweden. They were and still are forward thinking about EV charging. And the partnership that we have with them allows us to install charging stations in a lot of prime locations throughout the country. And other milestones, back in 2012, we completed a fast charging corridor connecting the main cities of the Nordics. We opened the first or the largest fast charging site in the Nordics with Tesla in 2016. We actually tested blockchain payments at one of our charging stations back in 2017.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, didn't continue with it. I wasn't there, but I guess we found out
Sounds
that it
funky.
might not.
How did you collaborate with Tesla work? So was it like a joint site, Tesla and Recharge?
Exactly, yeah. At Nebbenes, outside Oslo, if I'm not wrong.
All right.
And in 2018, we introduced the first high power charger, and we also finalized the first corridor of high power chargers connecting the capitals of Norway, Sweden, and Finland. And in more recent years, even though it's already 4 years ago, we conducted a wireless charging pilot for taxis. And we've also moved more into a space where we see ourselves as an energy company than just a charging network, as we've launched new smart energy solutions with technologies to improve energy efficiency for peak shaving and supporting the energy system with balancing and flexibility services. And that way providing.
That's really that's really an interesting evolution. Let's maybe come back to this. Would be nice to come back to it a bit later in the interview. But that's really interesting. Those milestones really helps to understand the evolution of the market. I'm impressed by So you said 2018 was the launch of the high power charger hub, right? That was really the key milestone, and I think that's but that definitely sets Sweden as one of the most advanced market because that's definitely earlier than in other markets in Europe. So that's it's really interesting. Yeah, thanks for sharing those details. So if you look at the landscape today of CPOs, so how does Recharge position itself on the Swedish EV charging market, right? And how do you differentiate from other CPOs?
Sure. We position ourselves as one of the most widespread and reliable CPOs in Sweden. And I guess what differentiates us even more is our ability to optimize the available grid power when building charging stations. So instead of just installing chargers, we think strategically about the infrastructure and ensure we're making the most of the power that's available. And that allows us to install more charging stations in areas where others might only be able to fit a few. So for example, while other players might only be able to build 2 or 3 HPCs, we can install many more and offering greater access and reliability for customers. Also, our HPC network is the largest in the Nordics, so we're continuing to expand that and to meet the growing demand in Sweden and the Nordics.
Yeah. What are EV users looking for today increasingly that they were not looking for before? How has this demand evolved?
Yeah, a big change. When EVs first started hitting the roads, the early adopters had very specific expectations. They were pretty much looking for innovation, right? And they were willing to accept the challenges that came with the new technology. But as it has become more mainstream, customer expectations have changed dramatically. So today, drivers expect the charging experience to be as seamless and convenient as fueling a gas-powered car. They demand high-speed charging, easy access, simple payment options like credit card terminals, and so on. So we and other players have worked really, really hard to ensure that services meet these needs and demands. And we're proud to deliver a reliable, user-friendly experience now. It's been really a discrepancy. People have been driving cars fueled by gas for quite some time, and everything's working 100% there. And that's what you're expecting when you change to EVs, of course.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and as you come out of the early adopters and move into the early majority, you don't have the same patience or same nerdiness, right? So you have to live up to those expectations, which are rising, and not as much slack. They can't give you as much slack as the early adopters, for sure.
Yeah,
very interesting. Yeah, absolutely. So if we look at from a CPO perspective, from Recharge perspective, what would be some of the biggest operational challenges in Sweden today? Is it location finding, grid access, usage rate, regulations? Tell us a bit how you see it.
Yeah, all of the above. But the most pressing challenge, I would say, as I mentioned briefly earlier, is the decline in EV share of new car sales. It's not maybe directly for CPOs. It's bigger than that, but it
Yes.
affects CPOs. It makes it harder for us
Yes.
to predict and meet demand. It makes it harder for us to cover our investments in charging stations. So that is a real challenge. Additionally, grid access remains an ongoing concern, specifically due to the lack of sufficient power capacity. It creates
Can
delays in ability to expand quickly,
yeah,
and so on.
as you mentioned, it might limit, it might kind of constrain the number of HPCs you put in the ground in some location. But
Yeah.
because I'm not super familiar with the Swedish grid, I mean, you have 40% of nuclear power, right? So you have a solid base of supply, right, and the hydro. So you have a very clean mix. And I thought that, I mean, how have historically the Swedish households heated themselves? Isn't it also with electricity, basically?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, not gas, right? So you're not
Mm.
facing. I mean, for me on the map of Europe, it's not the same grid congestion issues as in Holland, which has been heating up with gas, or Germany
Mm.
also to some extent. But you still mentioned that. Is it because of massive electrification also of the industries that the grid is under constraint? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. I'm going to be honest. This is not my expert field,
It's
um,
okay. Not
but
my
logically,
yes.
yeah. Let's guess a little bit, right? But I definitely think that you're onto something there with the electrification demands more, and the grid can't sort of keep up with it.
No,
And that's
that's
also why we've invested a lot more resources into solutions that maximize the available power, like the smart energy solutions that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, that's your best friend when you are heating grid limitations. Absolutely, yeah. And in
Mm.
terms of land grabbing, finding locations, how is it looking? Is it still a fight? Still options? How do you see that at Recharge?
Yeah, good question. Sweden has a little bit more land grabbing potential than, for example, Norway or Denmark, for that matter, as well. But the space is it's getting crowded for sure.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
potential is bigger in the north of Sweden than around the bigger cities and sort of the south.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely it's heating up and getting tough and tougher. But I guess that's where big partnerships come in very handy, right? So because those McDonald's, they're certainly sitting at the right spot, right, on turnpikes and so on. So I can imagine, yeah,
Yeah.
fantastic. So did we mentioned a bit about renewable energy and smart charging solutions. I worked on the deployment of batteries in Sweden, and was particular recharge. Again, it's not your area directly, but can you tell us a bit of around the activities in terms of
Yeah.
battery? Yes.
Yeah, sure. And renewable. I mean, first of all, sustainability is key for us and a lot of other players as well. Obviously, we're committed to sourcing only energy from renewable sources, and we have certificates to prove it. We're not unique there. Uh, in addition to renewable energy, in terms of battery and so on, we are integrating smart charging solutions, smart energy solutions, as we call them. They include load balancing, battery storage, virtual power plants, and virtual power plants is obviously an initiative that we're exploring together with you guys at Flexecharge. So we are looking into these things and working actively to sort of with technologies that help enhance energy efficiency and supporting the energy system. And
Yeah.
it enables us to also deploy charging despite grid constraints, which is
Yeah.
very important. So we try
Yeah.
to take an active role in becoming a more integrated part of the energy system, not just a load of the energy system. So,
Yeah.
but to be honest, I think for us also the most important thing for us, whatever the initiative might be, is to try and have the best customer experience out there. Um,
That's what pays the bill, right? For sure, that
mm,
you deliver as many kilowatt hours in the best conditions to the EV drivers dropping by. Yeah, but again, yeah, and Sweden is definitely an innovative market. I mean, referring to episode 16, where I spoke with Jonathan Robber from Fever Energy
mm,
from Stockholm, right? I mean, and there's also Ingrid doing grid scale. level batteries also, which are doing a lot of success. So I think, the Swedish market in terms of flexibility, ancillary services is really inspiring, and encourage everybody to follow what's cooking there. Yeah. So if we conclude a bit, we're looking ahead and take the crystal ball. So maybe allude a bit to it, but you said, well, we see ourselves more and more as an energy company. So is that where the future for Recharge? So where is the Swedish EV market going, and what is Recharge positioning in the future?
Yeah, I mean, we will definitely continue the sort of, let's call it, energy company quest, but we will also continue to play a key role in enabling the transition by strategically expanding the network, ensuring easy access to chargers, making the most efficient use of available grid power. I mean, ultimately, our mission is to ensure that the charging infrastructure is always ahead of the demand and supporting the shift towards a more sustainable future. That's for Recharge in let's call it, a nutshell. For Sweden, I think the EV market is poised to evolve rapidly. What we've seen over the last few years is that Sweden's new EV registrations have been on par with where Norway was around 2018, 2019. So with the right push from policymakers, including the introduction of the mentioned financial incentives for purchasing and owning of EVs, we could see Sweden's EV market grow even faster than Norway's. Mind you, it's a bigger country, roughly double the population size, so the potential is there. But again, I'm going to raise a finger with the financial incentives. I think policymakers, governments needs to sort of step in and do something about it. And I also think, I mean, there are a significant number of players operating in the EV charging universe, and we will probably start to see consolidations, not just in Sweden, but all over the Nordics. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see some already this year.
Yeah.
So that's my small crystal ball.
Yes, your little crystal ball. Yeah. Thank you for sharing what you see in your crystal ball. Absolutely. Thank you very much, David, for taking the time to drop by our virtual studio and the ChargePoint podcast. And wishing you a great day, and we'll be in touch again, hopefully, in the future. Thank you, David.
Thank you very much. Speak soon, Christoph.
Thank you. And that brings us to the end of this deep dive into the Swedish EV charging market and EV market, a country that once raced ahead in the e-mobility transition, but is now confronting the hard reality of slowing sales, infrastructure constraints, and a market in transition. One thing is clear. Sustaining EV momentum isn't just about technology or business models, it's about policy support too. Public subsidies have played a vital role in kickstarting EV adoption, and in markets like Sweden, their continued presence will be essential to avoid a full stall in progress. From Rickard from Implement Consulting, we got a macro view of the strategic reset CPOs needs to embrace. His message? The time for pure expansion is over. Success now lies in refining operations, embracing data-driven decision-making, and aligning closer with energy systems. He reminded us that the CPOs who succeed in next will be those who can intelligently balance grid constraints, user needs, and business economics in real time. David from Recharge then brought that strategy down to street level. At Recharge, they're seeing firsthand what it means to scale responsibly in a market that's cooling off. His take? You can't outbuild market headwinds, you need to adapt for them. From making smarter location choices to preparing the grid for peak loads, Recharge is staying ahead by acting like an energy company, not just a charger network. Sweden's EV story isn't over, it's just entering its next chapter. And for the rest of Europe watching closely, there's plenty to learn. Smart regulation, grid-aware infrastructure, and yes, sustained public support are all essential ingredients in keeping the wheels of e-mobility turning. Thanks for tuning into the ChargePoint podcast today. If you found these insights valuable, subscribe and share. We'll keep bringing up the voices shaping the future of charging, one episode at a time. In the meantime, until the next episode, stay safe and drive carefully.